Hi, lovely booktubers. I am Debs. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I'm in my book shack, and today I am going to talk to you. This is the penultimate reading wrap up for Shorty September. Now, for those of you who don't know what Shorty September is, it's the brainchild of Bert and Sian at Past Story Time and Heather at Soggy Expat Book Nerd. And the idea is you read short books. Now, they have put together Heather's designed this wonderful zine. There's 12 prompts in there. I've finished that already. So now I am just going through reading as many short books as I can. It's been a bit of a mixed bag this week. I decided to order myself some new books. I really shouldn't because I've got enough to be going on with. But anyway, I wanted some, so I did. And I ordered some books about mythology. And the first one was this one, Irish Myths and Legends, retold by Daly. Um, Obviously designed for kids. Who cares? I like kids' books. There's some nice illustrations in here. And we have stories in here, including the children of Lear, who were turned into swans and destined to fly to different places every couple of hundred years. We also have the mystery of what happened to the Tuatha De Danann, the original mythological Irish settlers who were in danger of being overrun and became what's known as the fairy folk. The other thing it's got in here, which is really, really useful when you are dealing with Irish Gaelic, is this is how you pronounce these names. It, who would have thought that something that is spelt Cathbad, Cathbad, is actually pronounced Cuved? Not me. So that's a very useful guide at the back. I enjoyed this. It was really nice. Um, it's sort of part of my reading around the world challenge where I'm trying to find myths and legends as well as modern literature. So that was a good one to start with. I also ordered this when I was going through my Let's Read Some Mythology thing. I've also got a book of Persian mythology, a book of Maori mythology, and tales and legends and myths from the British Isles. But we'll come to those later. I haven't read any of those. I have read this. This is really good. Oxford University Press, and they do a series called, I don't know if you can see it there, A Very Short Introduction. Here, that's where it says it. There are hundreds of these books. I didn't realise. This one is by Helen Morales, who was, at the time of writing, which was 2007, this was published. At that time, I don't know whether she is still now, she was the Director of Studies of Classics at Newnham College in Cambridge. So she's a bit of an expert. It's really interesting. It discusses predominantly Greek and Roman mythology. And she is arguing that mythology is a process rather than a product, and that actually classical myths are an event that you need to take part in. Um, Very interesting. Absolutely loved the format. Really good guide if you just want to pick up some very intelligent basics. I was so impressed that I had a look on World of Books who happened to be doing a buy four, get one free on books under a certain price. And so I bought 16 more. And I'm currently midway through this one. Linguistics. Well, I say midway through. I've actually just started it, but this is interesting as well. Now, I know 16 is overkill, but I just kept looking down the list and thinking, ooh, that looks interesting. So does that one. So I've got things like a very short introduction to racism, to ancient philosophy, to geopolitics, to the American electoral system, which confuses me no end, to things like German literature, linguistics, obviously. I've stuck them all on the shelf up there so no one can see them. I'll work my way through them eventually. But anyway, classical mythology, the Oxford University Press, very short introduction series, I think is brilliant. Next, I have been, as I've said before, I've been reading the box set of the Penguin Moderns, which are little books that give you a taster of great writers. There's 50 of them in this set. I think when Shorty September started, I'd done about 26 of them or something. Well, this week I read books 36 to 40 inclusive, so I've only got 10 more to go. And the ones for this week: Saul Bellow, Leaving the Yellow House. Hadn't read any Saul Bellow. Liked this very much. It's about a woman called Hattie who manages to crash her car one night. She lives out in the sticks back of beyond. She's lived there for years. She's a big old lady who lumbers about all over the place, and she drinks too much. So she crashes her car and it gets stuck on the railway lines, and she claims that the car, she crashed it because she sneezed, not because she was roaring drunk. Anyway, one of her neighbours helps her to tow the car off the lines, and in the process of doing that, she falls and breaks her arm and has to go to hospital. The rest of it is about whether or not she can survive on her own, living on her own, in the house that was left to her by a friend for any longer, because there aren't any people around to support her. It was really nicely written. You do become quite invested in Hattie, even though she's a bit of an old bag, and she drinks too much. But I enjoyed that. It was good. Next one, number 37, was The Cracked Looking Glass by Katherine and Porter. And this, Katherine Ann Porter is described as one of America's finest short story writers. And again, I don't think I'd ever read anything by her. This is the story of Rosaline and her husband Dennis. Rosaline is 20 or so years younger than Dennis. They met in New York and then have moved to a farm in Connecticut where they live a pretty sedentary life, really. And it's Rosalind discussing with herself mainly how she feels about her life and her marriage. Um, it's good. It's good. I enjoyed it. It's just the one novella in here. Um, their looking glass is cracked. She does want a new one. Next, this is one of my favourites. I've actually read this one before, James Baldwin, Dark Days, but I thought I'd better read it again in getting through all of these 50 books. It seemed a shame to just miss it out because I'd read it before. These are essays by James Baldwin, 3 of them. 2 were written, well, 2 were first published in the 1980s and 1 was published in the 1960s. And it was this book that made me want to read more of James Baldwin. And I then went on to read Giovanni's Room and Go Tell It on the Mountain. Um, it talks about racism. It talks about an America that's so violently divided by race. Baldwin was he was criticised on both sides. Actually, I mean, when Giovanni's Room was published, white people didn't like the fact that he was a black man writing about the experiences of white gay men. They also didn't like the fact that he was writing about gay men. Black people didn't like the fact that he was writing about white gay men or just gay men. Excuse me. Um, but he's a very poignant author. I mean, he writes beautifully, and these are well worth a read. His essays are really well worth a read. His other books are well worth a read, but I really enjoyed his essays. Number 39 in the series is Georges Simenon, Letter to My Mother, and this is interesting. This is a book a letter, a long letter that he wrote to his mother after she died. She was 91 when she died. She was a Belgian woman. A Belgian woman descended of a Dutch mother and German father. And he had a difficult relationship with his mother. When he wrote this, he was in his 70s. Um, and there was never any great falling out, but he left home at 19 and never returned again. I mean, he stopped by to see her. And the longest time he'd spent with her are the final 4 or 5 days where he's sitting by her hospital bed waiting for her to die. And it's it's a discussion on it's not mother-child relationships in general. There's a bit of that in there, but it's it specifically. Um, and there's still bitterness there. You can sense the bitterness. He doesn't he doesn't think that his parents were particularly warm or loving. Um, so it can be a bit bitter, but actually, I like the way he writes, and he it's the thoughts going around in his head. But the whole thing's addressed to his mother, and it's worth a read. It's worth a read. Finally, I'd never heard of this guy. Apparently, William Carlos Williams revolutionized American verse, and it made him one of the greatest 20th century poets. I didn't know anything about him, but I will look for more now because I liked these. Um, I didn't like Death the Barber, the title one, but they're all very short. Very few of them go over one page of text. But they're lovely. The descriptions are lovely, and I enjoyed them very much. Most of them. But there must be probably 40 in here, and I would say I really like 30 of them. So that's not too bad going, is it? Now, my final two books. I don't know which way to hold these up. I went for some manga. I've never read any manga, but my stepson is a really big fan, so he's lent them to me. This first one, Gunslinger Girl Volume 1 by Aida. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is about a secret organization that takes young girls who are disabled, have been disabled in some way, and who have lost their parents, and turns them into part cyborgs, brainwashes them, and sends them out with a partner to kill people. It's a group of young, doll like assassins who are part human and heart machine. I don't really know what I thought about this. I read it. It was okay. I'm glad I didn't purchase it. I'm glad I just borrowed it. Nah, it probably wasn't for me, this one. I did struggle with how to read these because I mean they're very quick. I'm reading them for Shorty September. They're slightly over a couple of pages over the 200 mark, but obviously there's not much text, so I consider them to be short. But these, you see, you start there and go that way. I get that bit, but you go that way and then you appear to go down, and then that's joined to that, so you go down there. It's all a bit confusing. I found this one more confusing than this one. Hellsing by Kohta Hirano. Again, volume 1. Liked this. This was good. I think I preferred the style of graphics to start with, but also I preferred the story. This Helsing is an old secret organisation that has been running to save England from monsters, which sounds like a very worthy thing to do. And its secret weapon is this guy. This guy is Alucard. Alucard. It's Dracula backwards. Alucard is a vampire, and who better to fight vampires than a vampire? He's got a big gun that has special silver bullets in it, and it's pretty good. Pretty good. So I flew through this one and absolutely loved this one. And I wouldn't have been disappointed had I paid money for this one. And I would probably consider reading more. And I'm willing to bet said stepson probably has more. He doesn't tend to only buy the first volume in something. But I like this. So, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. 9 short books this week for Shorty September. Can't believe how quickly September's flown by. Next week, next Friday, is going to be the very final of my Shorty September wrap-ups. So I'm not sure what I'm going to read yet, but I ought to make it good. Thank you for popping by. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. I hope the weather is kind to you. We've got rain and showers here today, but it's quite nice. I will speak to you again Sunday when I do my weekly wrap up. I've got lots of videos planned over the next, probably by the end of next week. So I'm really sorry if you think it's overkill. But there's several things ending and several other things starting. And so I'll be back. Have a lovely weekend. Thanks for popping by.